The beginning of the end. That's what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said this past week after Ukrainian forces liberated Kherson. Yes, the first major city to be captured by Russia in their brutal invasion is now another example of Ukraine's surprising endurance as the war enters its 10th month. Passenger trains are now running again from Kyiv to Kherson. Ukrainian businesses are even reopening in the region, like this grocery store selling Ukrainian goods.
Das ist unser Lieblingsgeschäft ATB. Das ist unsere Lieblingsukrainische Ware, weil seit Februar wir haben hier nur russische Geschäfte gehabt und russische Ware. Und prinzipiell wir haben nichts gekauft. Also ich bin prinzipiell habe keine Rubel gehabt und keine russische Ware gekauft. Und heute erster Tag, das ist unser liebste Geschäft. Also wie gesagt ukrainische Ware, deswegen bin ich hier. Ich möchte etwas Leckeres kaufen.
As of mid-November, Ukraine had taken back 54% of territory captured by Russia, according to an analysis from the New York Times. Meanwhile, UK intelligence reports that Russian morale is so low that Russian military commanders are threatening to shoot their own soldiers if they try to retreat. But as winter approaches, Ukraine may find it harder to keep up the impressive counteroffensive that they've been waging. The progress they've made to this point has been stunning, so much so that American officials have suggested that Ukraine might want to try negotiating a withdrawal by Russia, negotiate that withdrawal with Russia while they have this upper hand.
The Russian military is really hurting bad. So you want to negotiate at a time when you're at your strength and your opponent is at weakness. And it's possible, maybe, that there'll be a political solution. All I'm saying is there's a possibility for it. That's all I'm saying.
And General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, isn't the only one who is supporting or talking about a diplomatic approach. President Biden's own advisors think that this war will end at the negotiating table, according to the New York Times, though they don't believe that the current moment is quite right. Even Biden's national security advisor, though, Jake Sullivan, wants Ukraine to at least signal that it's open to talks with Russia. So why, then, was it so controversial for House progressives to support talks with the Russian president just a few weeks ago? 30 House progressives signed a letter to Biden back in October urging the president to, quote, pair the military and economic support the United States has provided to Ukraine with a proactive diplomatic push to seek a realistic framework for a ceasefire. They continued, we are under no illusions regarding the difficulties involved in engaging Russia given its outrageous and illegal invasion of Ukraine. However, if there is a way to end the war while preserving a free and independent Ukraine, it is America's responsibility to pursue every diplomatic avenue to support such a solution that is acceptable to the people of Ukraine. Their letter sparked such a backlash full of angry condemnations that they wound up retracting the letter to the president after only 24 hours. Progressive Caucus Chair Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal said the letter was released by staff without vetting and regrets that it was published around the same time. The Republican Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy suggested pulling back financial support for Ukraine. But Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna, one of those who signed the withdrawn letter, is still supporting the positions expressed in the letter and says it shouldn't have been withdrawn.
Let me just say what my position is, which matters. I have supported every package of giving aid to Ukraine, and I plan to support continuing to arm Ukraine. All the letter said is that we, at the same time that we stand with Ukraine, need to make sure that we're reducing the risk for nuclear war, that we're engaging in talks with the Russians to make sure that the conflict doesn't escalate. We need to support Ukraine with arms, and we need diplomacy. That's common sense. I also believe that the president, as he said, we're at a risk of nuclear war. Don't you think our counterparts should be talking to Russia? Of course they should.
It's easy to slam proponents of negotiations with Russia as stooges of Vladimir Putin or accuse them of wanting to sell out Ukraine. It's especially easy to smear the left as weak and pro-Putin when progressives push for more diplomacy. But the reality is that even our top general and the president's national security advisor recognize that you can support Ukraine, oppose Russia, and recognize that a diplomatic solution is the only solution to this conflict. Joining me now to discuss all of this and more, Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna. He sits on the House Armed Services Committee and, of course, signed and defended that Congressional Progressive Caucus letter. Congressman, thank you for coming back on the show. Do you think we're closer or further away from a diplomatic solution to this conflict since that letter was put out and then promptly withdrawn last month?
Well, Mehdi, as you know, I stood by the letter, and I actually believe the letter created some space for a conversation about negotiation. You saw after the letter generals like General Milley coming out and saying that we do need negotiation. You saw even the administration's own officials saying that talking to Russia was needed to de-escalate. So in an ironic way, the brouhaha over the letter accomplished what it was trying to do, which is create space for the administration to engage in sensible diplomacy.
You clearly feel you sound vindicated by your defense of that letter, by the content of that letter. You say it created the space to get to where we are today. Why then did your colleagues, including Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal, why did they all run away from the letter, disown it publicly?
Well, I have tremendous respect for, of course, Pramila Jayapal and all my colleagues, but I think it was a mistake to withdraw the letter. What happened is it was a few weeks before the election, and there was this whole Beltway brouhaha, and they were going to try to blame the Progressive Caucus for the results in the election. Now, here is the reality, Mehdi. I don't think there was a single vote in a single race that was determined by that letter, but somehow I think people got cold feet. They didn't want to get blamed for hurting the Democrats during the midterms, and I think it was a mistake to withdraw it.
Congressman Joe Cirincione, the defense analyst, who I'm sure you know, he's not really a hawk himself. He'd probably call himself a progressive. He said your letter and your approach has a deeply flawed conception of diplomacy, and that the biggest problem is not Biden or Zelensky, but Putin. The Russian leader does not want to negotiate. What do you say to that criticism and that argument?
Well, of course, the biggest problem of the war is Putin, and Putin has committed an unprovoked aggression. But that has nothing to do with how we prevent de-escalation, escalation, and how we figure out a way to bring the conflict at some point to a close. I mean, no one in the letter assigns all the blame to Putin. We're just saying still have negotiation. We had negotiation at the height of the Cold War.
But his point, Congressman, Cirincione's point is that Putin doesn't want to negotiate. Everything we're hearing from Russia is we'll sit down and negotiate once we get to keep our 4 territories that we've annexed, once we get the West to recognize Crimea. That's not a negotiation. That's a fait accompli.
Well, there are 2 different issues here, Mehdi. One is, are the Russians willing to engage in communication to ensure that we minimize the risk of nuclear war, minimize potential escalation? My understanding is those conversations are actually taking place. The second question is, are the Russians willing to negotiate an end to the war? And I think it's fair to say right now Putin is not open to negotiating an end to the war. But that doesn't mean that we should not signal that if Putin recognizes that he can't have Ukraine's sovereign territory, that we stand ready to have communication. That's all the letter said.
Just to be clear, you don't agree with those, including some of the Baltic governments, obviously Ukrainian officials, many liberals and conservatives in America who say the war doesn't end until all Russian forces are ejected from Ukraine.
Well, I agree with the position that we need to have to stand with Ukraine, that we need to support Ukraine, that we need to be for whatever the Ukrainian people want. But I also agree with General Milley's point that ultimately that will probably be a political situation, a political settlement. And it's not for me to say what the Ukrainian people should want. That's for President Zelensky, and President Biden has made that clear. Our point is simply have the conversation with Russian counterparts and don't preclude the possibility of negotiation.
You mentioned a moment ago that some of your colleagues were kind of, you know, you didn't use these words, they're my words, running scared from the midterms and from Republican attacks on being soft on defense or soft on Russia. Is it difficult for progressives in Congress, like yourself and others, to differentiate yourselves from conservatives, from MAGA types like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who want to end all funding to Ukraine and are basically pro-Russia?
No, it's not, because their view is isolationism. Our view is for statesmanship and diplomacy. We are standing clearly with Ukraine. We're standing for Ukrainian sovereignty, but we believe that effective American leadership has always also had diplomacy and negotiation. That's very different than a view of American isolationism, which says we should not take any moral position in what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, and I'm paraphrasing, but some Russian colleagues saying, well, why should Americans care? And that is, I think, the difference between a progressive view, which believes in international engagement but restraint and diplomacy, versus an American nationalism, isolationism view, which often defines the far right.
Okay, so just to change gears, switch gears a bit. Joe Biden, President of the United States, leader of your party, just celebrated his 80th birthday. Congratulations to him. But the question is he now too old to run again for president? Some would say he is too old. He should give way to younger candidates. If he were to run and win, Congressman, he would be 86 at the end of a second term. Do you think Joe Biden should be running again for president in 2024?
I do. He's earned that right. He exceeded the expectations in the midterms. He's had extraordinary achievements, Inflation Reduction Act, Infrastructure Bill, CHIPS Act, American Rescue Plan. You know, Jimmy Carter was effective till his early 90s. I think it just depends on different people. But when I have met the president, I have found him vibrant, I've found him engaged, and I found him effective. And I don't think whether someone is 40 or whether someone's 80, what needs to be evaluated is, can they do the job, and are they the right person for the moment? Joe Biden has proved that he's been successful.
So, talking of elections and vacancies and campaigns, California Congressman, your colleague Adam Schiff, did not run for House leadership recently, or he's not going to run for the vacant seat that Nancy Pelosi is leaving behind in the House, because reportedly he wants Senator Dianne Feinstein's seat, California Democrat. She hasn't said yet that she's going to retire. There have been many concerns about her age and health and mental competence. Do you think those concerns are well-founded? And if she does retire, would you want to run for that vacant seat too?
Well, I don't know in terms of the concerns. My interactions, though it's been about a year ago with her, have been perfectly normal. But that's for her and her team to make that determination. I will say, if she were to retire early, it will be Gavin Newsom who appoints. If she fills out her term, then we'll certainly take a look at it. Of course, I think it should be a strong progressive in that seat. There are many others, like Barbara Lee and a number of other people, and so we should make sure that a strong progressive wins. But yeah, of course, I'd be flattered if I was one of the people being considered.
One last question, Congressman. We often introduce you on this show as the congressman from Silicon Valley. That is your constituency. They are your people. And I have to ask about what is going on at Twitter. You have a guy in your constituency right now. His name is Elon Musk. He's there till all hours of the night with the remaining staff at Twitter HQ in San Francisco. What do you make of the chaos at Twitter, the bringing back of Donald Trump, this weird unleashing of some of the worst people, worst accounts, worst bigots on Twitter in the name of free speech, according to Musk?
Well, I'll say publicly what I've said privately to Elon Musk directly. Why is he wasting his talent on Twitter? I mean, who wants to be calling the balls and strikes on Twitter? Go try to figure out how you can capture more solar energy. Go figure out how you can build electric vehicles. Go figure out how you can help get more satellites into space and have some independent entity deal with Twitter and make those decisions. But it also shows the need for regulation, and that is that these social media companies are media companies, and they shouldn't be just at the whims of private capital, whoever that is.